Now, the first episode in a new series of Mark Steele's In Town, where the comedian explores some of the UK's lesser-known towns and finds out what makes them distinctive. Tonight's show is from the Mick Jagger Centre in Dartford, Kent.
You should come to Dartford because Blue Water's up the road, and you can come and see the M25, and that's amazing at rush hour. It's a really good thing to come and see.
The park, the schools are excellent. There's a great butcher's with wonderful sausages.
Mick Jagger was from Dartford, so that makes it good.
If Dartford was a 3-course meal...
For a starter, it'd be McDonald's. For a main course, KFC. And for afters, I think definitely a kebab.
Mark Steele's In Town.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the second series of Mark Steele's In Town, which this week comes from the Mick Jagger Centre in Dartford, which for those people, if there can be any such people that don't know, Dartford is along the Thames, sort of past where the EastEnders map goes, out east of there, and just into Kent. It must be very confusing growing up here, I think, because you're near the hard bits, but it's next to rural Kent. It must be confusing. That's why you get kids on bikes hanging around in the pedestrianised precincts, trying to look like they're in the city, kids, but not quite managing it. Going like, listen up, like we as a River Durrant massive, innit, you know. This is my manor blood. You don't diss this round here because this is an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's a funny progression along the sort of south of the Thames as you go out of London. First of all, you get, hi, I'm Greenwich. Put my bonus into buying a couple of flats at 100k, sold them for 5 mil, bought a crematorium, converted it into flats, lost a lot in the credit crunch, got it all back off the government plus a tip, decided to buy Bulgaria. And then you come a little bit further out and it's, hello, I'm Blackheath. There is, of course, a regulation here that nobody is permitted to reside within the parish boundaries unless they can prove that for at least 9 generations they have attained the rank of Admiralty. And then you just go over the hill and down the other side. Hello, I'm Thamesmead. Oi, Greenwich, I see your pretty boat burnt down. And then you get to Dartford, which is not London, but it's probably fair to say that it's not what most people think of Kent being, the sort of Garden of England-y type of bit of Kent. There is a quaint charm, clearly, to the town, which has made it a subject for poets. There's an old poem about the area that's in a number of the history books, quoted by a chap called Edward Creasy, written in 1857, and it's about the sort of the trades of the local areas, the villages around Dartford and Dartford itself, and it goes like this. Sutton for mutton, Horton for beef, Southdown for gingerbread, Dartford for a thief. Edward Creasy, 1857. Also, Dartford gets a mention in a delightful little book that I found at the Blue Water Centre, which I'll be mentioning later, called Who's Buried Where in Kent? And there's like Henry IV's in Canterbury and Malcolm Campbell's in Chislehurst. And for round here, it says, Big Tony, shallow grave, Farningham Woods. Now, I should declare fairly early on a historical connection of my own in Dartford, because I was brought up in Swanley, which is about 4 miles away, which is a hugely popular neighbouring town. But to us, you were the big city. Dartford was like, wow, we're going over to... You were San Fran bloody Cisco to us. When I was 12, wow, imagine living in Dartford. They've got a co-op. It must be amazing. Because Swanley has got nothing. It is very, very difficult to emphasise the extent of the nothingness that Swanley has got. You'll get people from Guildford or Bournemouth or something that will say, oh, yeah, I'm from a place similar to you, nothing much. You think, no, you've got, like, pubs and things and a post office. We've got nothing. Going up to someone from Swanley and saying, yeah, I'm from a similar place is like going up to Nelson Mandela and saying, I've had hassle from the old Bill myself. I know exactly how you're feeling. Some of you might know the comedian Linda Smith was from Erith, which is sort of about the same distance going upriver. And after she died, I saw a quote from her where she said, I often had arguments with Mark Steele about which was more horrible, Erith or Swanley. I put up a good fight for Erith, but in my heart I knew he was right. But we were dazzled when we came over here. I know these pubs, there's 40-something pubs even in the centre of Dartford, and we had two, which includes the Lulling Stone, which is suicide. Going in there, it just is suicide. These people who go all the way to Switzerland are wasting their money. Just go to Swanley, go in the Lulling Stone and go, I'm not from round here, that'll do it. But Dartford is prettier than I remember it. You've got a dainty bridge here and the River Darent and a park in the middle of the town and little boards in the high street telling you stuff like Dixon's is built on a site of great historical interest. And the planners have done that thing that they do to everywhere, ripping up the streets and shoving in retail parks and concrete underpasses and junctions with 11 sets of lights, so you're driving through trying to get just there, but there's no way of getting anywhere without being forced down a slip road that takes you to the Matalan car park, and there's no way of getting out of there without reversing through the checkout. And that's the first thing that anybody arriving by train sees of Dartford now, is they come down those stairs and then they're 50 yards away from the town centre, but to get to it you have to cross this dual carriageway with traffic going in 17 different directions in front of you. So crossing the road is like some bloody computer game, and you have to watch everybody else and see how they're getting on and go, hang on, he's experienced, he seems to manage it, that poor old dear's been squashed by the 477 at Orpington. And if you do manage to get across that bit that then takes you to a little bit of a shrub behind a fence that... you then get across another one and then you're at the back of the bins in the Orchard Theatre. And you expect a big voice to come out from somewhere saying, you have completed the first part of your task. But to reach the centre of Dartfordius, you must navigate your path past the three-headed dog. The other problem, of course, with the town centre is that everything has moved up to Bluewater, this huge shopping centre that's 2 miles up the A2. So when I was walking around here, I passed the cinema where I saw Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Papillon and such things in my youth, and it was shut down, which was quite sad. But then it turns out there's no cinema here in the town at all, because there's one at Bluewater with 5 million screens in it. And the record shop where I bought the first Clash album is gone, because now if you want a CD you have to go to Bluewater. And I said to someone, is West Hill Hospital still here? Oh no, that's gone. And I thought, oh, don't tell me now. You have to go to the Bluewater Cardiac Complex between Gap and Clinton Cards. And if I go around someone's house and ask where the toilet is, they'll say, oh no, we haven't got a toilet here now, you've got to go to World of Turds at Bluewater. I know you must be used to Bluewater by now, but it isn't natural. If you ever do in your life descend down a pass between cliffs into a vast subterranean glass world, it should be because you've been commanded to serve an evil villain who's about to take over the world unless he's stopped by Doctor Who, not to buy a pair of sodding underpants. But when I went down there for a day, and it seemed all right at first. I wandered about and I had a milkshake in Ed's Diner, and there was clothes and more clothes and more clothes, and I thought, well, this is not so bad. And then the extraordinary thing that I found was, despite there being tons and tons and quarry loads of clothes, the thing I needed, which was a pair of jeans for me 13-year-old son, I just couldn't get. So I found myself just walking round and round and desperate for anything, and going into River Island and Gap and, do you please do any jeans for 13-year-old boys? And everywhere it's, no, I mean, we do jeans up to the age of 11 for boys, but the next size up is Russian heavyweight boxer. So what do people think of Bluewater? Is there a sort of divide? Some people like it, or do you all think it's horrible? That's not that enthusiastic, is it? Do you all have to go to it now? for anything, and that's a nuisance, is it? Does anybody like it at all? I don't want to stick with stereotypes here, but I couldn't help noticing a certain male-female divide. Do you know there's a chaplain? They've got their own chaplain there. And they've got a place of peace and quiet in the Blue Water Shopping Centre, which is situated between Pret a Manger and the Carphone Warehouse. Do you think that's what the good Lord was thinking of when he put us here? If I'd known there was a chaplain, I would have gone and seen him that day and gone, you ain't got any genes, have you? As well as the A2 to Blue Water, throughout history it seems to me that the most important part of Dartford has been the route out of Dartford. Watling Street, the famous road that the Romans built, obviously fits that description. Dartford was the first major stopping point for pilgrims on the way from London to Canterbury to worship at the shrine of Thomas a Becket, murdered in the cathedral in the 12th century. Dartford's position between Canterbury and London did make this one of the most important towns in Britain at one of its most important moments in 1381. Because that was the year of the rebellion known as the Peasants' Revolt, led by Wat Tyler, who marched his army through Dartford, and it's claimed by much of Dartford that he came from this town. There's a beautiful old pub called the Wat Tyler that has a plaque saying "Home of Wat Tyler" outside, which seems plausible because it looks very old, except for the fact that it turns out it was built 25 years after he died. According to the accounts of the revolt of 1381 that are written by Dartford historians, Wat Tyler lived in Dartford and started the revolt following a visit from a taxman who was vicious to his own daughter. But strangely, I can't find very much written by anybody else that confirms this, so I can't help thinking it's one of those things that local historians do. And there's probably other bits like, oh, you know Mozart, he was from Northfleet. He got sacked from the cement works because he kept spending all day writing minuets. Christopher Columbus, he's from Erith. It's where he got started. He discovered Essex. For him, everyone thought if he went over there, he just fell off the edge of the earth. Well, Dartford was definitely a major part of the revolt that erupted mostly in Kent and Essex. Now, strangely, the episode that led to peasants and tradesmen feeling more confident in defending themselves was the Black Death that had happened a few years before, the plague that wiped out a third of the population. But this meant that after the Black Death, there was a shortage of labour. So now the poor would travel from one parish to another, which was illegal, and work for whoever paid them the most. The problem for the monarchy was that it had bankrupted itself with wars against the French, as usual. So to raise money, they introduced a poll tax to be paid by every person over the age of 15. And if there was a dispute about whether a child was eligible, an inspector could decide by looking to see if they had pubic hair. And if they did, then they had to pay. So the common people, as a result of this, tradesmen as well as peasants, were clearly furious about this, but also they were more inclined to make a fuss now, given their improved bargaining position with the labour shortage. To start with, the whole village of Brentwood in Essex chased the tax collectors back to London. And then the villagers crossed the river here to Dartford to advise everybody here to do the same. So there was a chap called Abel Kerr, apparently, who was from Erith, and Kerr then set about recruiting commoners to an army, using farm tools as weapons, and they drove a senior judge out of the county. Kerr's army was based in Dartford, but they then captured Rochester Castle, they went on to Maidstone, and it's this point, really, after Maidstone, that Wat Tyler sort of emerges as the leader, and he led this battalion of peasants and tradesmen to Canterbury. And then he announced that as the Archbishop there was supporting the king, the Archbishop was a traitor and the people would elect a new one. And now, you think 600 years later, imagine how absurd even that sounds, even now, the idea of electing the Archbishop of Canterbury. How would that work? To vote for the Bishop of Durham, ring 086 or 4. For the Bishop of York, 086 or 5. Or for Peter Andre, 086 or 6. At Southwark, the gates were opened up for the rebels by sympathetic Londoners, and Tyler's army met up with the peasants from Essex, and they captured the prison at Fleet Street, and they released the debtors, and they burnt down the Savoy Palace, owned by the King's brother. And the person they did trust, though, was the King himself, Richard II, who, apart from anything else, was 14. So the 14-year-old king agreed to meet Wat Tyler and his army at Mile End, and the king promised the peasants that he was sympathetic, and they arranged to meet again, but it was a trap, because this time when they met, the mayor of London, a chap called William Walworth, came forward with a dagger and killed Wat Tyler. Dartford now claims Wat Tyler as an ex-resident. Even my junior school in Swanley, where the classes were named after people with a local connection, we had a Tyler class. But Maidstone also says that he's from there. Colchester does. Deptford does. There's something heartening, I think, about the way all these towns go. No, the bloke who led a peasant army that burnt down buildings and rampaged across London and beheaded aristocrats came from here. And there's something heartening about that. Another person who had trouble travelling through Dartford was Jane Austen. She apparently came here. She wrote a letter from the Bull and George Hotel when she stayed here on the way to Rochester, complaining that the transport company had accidentally sent all her luggage to Gravesend. And this incident presumably must have been the one that inspired the passage in Pride and Prejudice that goes, "I regret, Mr. Darcy, that the whereabouts of my precious baggage eludes me, for it was dispatched by an errant travel clerk. Furthermore, I cannot reach this town's centre, for I have already witnessed attempt to cross the causeway by one unfortunate soul who was instantly crushed by the 477 stagecoach bound for Orpington." There's a romantic... I think there's a sort of romantic, seedy side as well to Dartford in Victorian times. There was regular prize fighting on the marshes. Lady wrestlers would challenge. Any lady of Dartford, £5 if they cannot be overpowered in 15 minutes. And in brackets, competition not open to ladies from Swanley. And there was a Reverend... this is one of my favourite characters from Dartford history. A Reverend Edward Edmonds, who was appointed headmaster of the grammar school in 1851, but was sacked because when he was appointed, he immediately went to bed with many bottles of gin and brandy for several days. I'll send me kids to that school. Fantastic. William Cobbett, the radical journalist, was asked what he thought of Kent around this time, and he said, I quote, "After you leave Dartford, it becomes excellent." But, to be honest, any town can point to sort of certain elements in its history that make it look hard, but here's the one that gives Dartford something extra, I think. In 1908, the Salvation Army Band wanted to play in a part of the market called the Bull Centre, and they were told that they couldn't. So the Salvation Army Band stood their ground, a fight broke out, 3 people were imprisoned, and the front page headline in the following week's war cry said, "Battle for the Bull Centre." That's when a town's hard, when the Salvation Army is going, "Come on then! You want some of the Christian soldiers, you slags? We're hard, we're mean, we've got a tambourine." But there is, though, another side to the history of this area that I somehow missed completely while I was being brought up round here, which is the connection it has with gypsies. Now, I do remember that there were settlements in the fields at the back of Swanley, where the M25 is now, but I came to think that that was just sort of normal, that every town had a few gypsies out the back, you know, the way everything that you do, you think everybody else does it when you're a kid. Like, I remember the first time I went round a mate's house when I was about 9, and they had pudding with a fork, and I thought, what? Ugh, you're weird. And it was like that. I remember going to Brighton and thinking, well, where do you keep your gypsies? And I I regret now that I never made any contact with them. But when I moved away, I realised that there were little bits of gypsiness that had found its way into my world without me realising. Like people called each other chav, way back before it became the sort of word with its current meaning, because that was a gypsy word for mate. And at school, we had a pudding, as I'm sure most of you know, called gypsy tart, made from evaporated milk and sugar. And it's the sickliest, sweetest recipe ever. I bet even wasps go up to it and go, zzz, oh, that's too much. Apparently, the first Romany settlements, I found out, were set up here around sort of this area of Kent in the 1500s. And from then on, travellers would come to Kent to work on the hop farms and pick vegetables. And then eventually, in the 1940s, there were 1,600 gypsies living on Belvedere Marshes on the edge of the town by the Thames. So there's a bit of me there that thinks, hang on, you're travellers. By nature, you travel, which means you could go anywhere in the world. What made you look at an atlas and go, Belvedere Marshes looks nice? But for all the reasons you can imagine, all the myths about gypsies stealing things and not washing and their horses galloping everywhere flew about, and there were protests against them, and shops and pubs had put up signs saying no gypsies. Even in 1983, John Wells, the MP for Maidstone, said there is a vicious cycle of gypsies not attending school and breeding. What a fantastic excuse that is for not going to school. Wish I'd thought of that. Why weren't you here yesterday, Steele? It's breeding, sir. Tommy here. The most famous part of Dartford of all, of course, though, has got to be another route out of Dartford. The crossing. Originally there was a tunnel, and then in the 1980s came the bridge, where you cross the Thames properly under giant winding suspending monuments to engineering, not some wimpy piece of balsa wood like London Bridge. And the people in control of it are obviously absolutely determined that everybody appreciates the full majesty of this structure, which is why they've organised it so that you have to queue for 5 hours to cross it, to give you ample time to take in its grand magnificence. There's a website for people to make comments on the crossing, and it's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of moaning. Nick of Caterham writes, the Dartford crossing sums up everything that's wrong with this country. It really is the road to hell. It's no wonder some people here are jealous of the gypsies. They set off in a caravan and get right across to Europe. You set off in a shiny black Audi and can't even get across the bridge out of town. The first time you get stuck in this, you think there must be a reason for it. There must be some huge thing that's happened, like there's a dinosaur on the loose or something. Or toxins from the power plant have created a school of giant piranhas who've eaten the bridge or something. And then you get to where the problem is, and it's just that there's the toll. You're stuck in this endless queue because everybody has to stop and pay the toll. Now, when the bridge was built, the government promised the £1 toll would only be in place until the building of the bridge had been paid for, and then it would be scrapped. And then in 2004, the initial cost had been paid off, and as promised, the £1 toll was scrapped and replaced with another one of £1.50. It wouldn't be so bad if there was an alternative, but there's nothing. There's no trains, no ferry. They should have a zip wire. But the most successful international export from Dartford is in the name of this building, obviously, because this is the town that gave the world Keith Richard and Mick Jagger. Jagger wouldn't stand a chance in Dartford now, I don't think, if he came in now. He'd just be going, which way's the town centre? How do I cross the road? I've been mowed down by a 423 to Longfield. The Jaggers, because this surprised a lot of people, I think, who don't live around here. The Jaggers lived in Wilmington, didn't they, which was the villagey end of the town. And Mick, of course, came to Dartford Grammar, the school that this theatre is attached to, and Mick played at the Railway Hotel in 1958. And I bet everybody here claims to know him in some way. I bet everyone's got, his cat used to crap on my cousin's path. I bet there's that everywhere. People go, Angie, that's about my Auntie Angela who worked in the paper mill. Wild Horses is about the night the gypsies' horses broke free down Shepherd's Lane. Street Fighting Man is about my mate who drinks down the Lullingston. And You Can't Always Get What You Want is about trying to buy boys' jeans in Bluewater. And the bit that confused me as well, the Mick Jagger Centre is in part of Dartford Grammar School. How do they keep discipline here then? Does the headmaster go, I am ashamed to announce that pupils from this school have been caught drinking alcohol, taking drugs, partying to all hours, fornicating, and generally besmirching the good name of the Mick Jagger Centre. I thought it'd be brilliant to get someone who's got some sort of connection to Mick Jagger, somebody who knew him perhaps when he was here. And so we got in touch with Mick Jagger's publicity office, and yesterday they rang up and said, well, it's been very, very difficult to get anybody who knew him, but if you like, you can send your questions to Mick, because he's in Mustique at the moment. He's sitting on the beach and he can just answer them on his little thing. So the questions we asked was, first of all, can you think of 3 things that are better about Dartford than Mustique? So number 1, he's put more pubs in Dartford. The chips on the way home are better. And number 3, he's put Dartford FC have a much stronger back 4. They would definitely beat Mustique Rovers. And I asked him, did you ever eat gypsy tart? This is an exact answer. He's put, let me tell you, my mum used to make it all the time. She was North Kent and District gypsy tart making champion. Now, so that's pretty cool from Mick Jagger of Mustique. But I bet there's still people going, sell out, he ain't played the Railway Hotel for years. And the final thing, I'll just finish with this, good people of Dartford. I did also discover some notes, hitherto undiscovered, from Mick that suggest that some of one of his songs in particular that had different lyrics originally, that I think sum up the spirit then of Dartford. And I'll finish with this. When you're trying to reach the bridge, but the queue's a 20-miler, and you want the world to scream with you the motto of Wat Tyler. Thanks very much, Dartford. Cheers.
Mark Steele's in Town was written and performed by Mark Steele with additional material by Pete Sinclair. The producer was Julia Mackenzie.